John Wick was once the most feared assassin on Earth. But after settling his final blood debt with the High Table, he disappeared. No one knew that he had left the planet, wandering among the stars. An ancient order known as the Celestial Order had invited John to become one of their warriors, protecting the galaxy from relic hunters and cosmic warlords. But he refused. He only wanted peace, until the Vorteri, a ruthless alien species, came hunting for him. On a remote space station called Nova 6, John sat in a dimly lit cantina, sipping a glass of burning hot alien liquor. Around him, creatures of every shape and size watched with amusement. To them, he was nothing more than an anomaly, a primitive being from a forgotten world. A towering mercenary with blue reptilian skin swaggered toward him, sneering. "So, you're John Wick? A mere human from a dust-ridden rock? I've heard you were Earth's deadliest assassin. But this is the galaxy, and your kind is nothing but insects to us." Laughter erupted throughout the cantina. A cyborg with shimmering metal scales flicked a coin at John, smirking. "The legendary hitman from Earth? I bet you won't survive 3 days out here in the border worlds." John didn't react. He simply took another sip, his eyes cast downward. But the moment the mercenary laid a hand on his shoulder, John moved. In a blink, he drew a plasma pistol and fired a single shot through the alien's skull, leaving a smoking hole. The cantina fell silent. The laughter died. The smug grins turned into expressions of fear. They had just made a grave mistake. The Celestial Order had once offered him a path to redemption, to fight for something greater than himself. He had refused. But now, the Vorteri had forced his hand. They weren't just after him. They had come for something far more dangerous: the Starborn Key, an artifact that could unlock a power beyond imagination. And John Wick was the only one who held the final clue. The ruins of Nova 6 smoldered under the weight of destruction, the scent of burnt metal and ash lingering in the cold vacuum of space. Among the wreckage, John Wick moved like a shadow, his steps silent but deliberate. Bodies of fallen mercenaries and scattered debris painted a grim picture of the massacre that had taken place. He had seen war zones before, but this was different. This was personal. Then, amidst the chaos, he saw them. A woman, unlike any human he had ever encountered, stood defiantly among the ruins. Her form was sleek and ethereal, her eyes glowing with an unnatural silver hue. She bore an intricate armor that shimmered under the station's dim emergency lights, its patterns pulsating with a life of their own. Beside her sat a mechanical canine, its golden eyes scanning the horizon, body twitching in anticipation. John aimed his plasma pistol at her instinctively. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the woman said, her voice smooth yet edged with an undeniable authority. John didn't lower his weapon. "Who are you?" The woman narrowed her eyes, studying him for a moment before scoffing. "You're him, aren't you? The human assassin. I thought you'd be taller." John remained silent. He had no interest in engaging in petty banter. She folded her arms, the mechanical dog beside her letting out a low, synthetic growl. "My name is Serafini. And this is NYX." She gestured to the canine, who continued to watch John like a predator stalking prey. "We don't have time for introductions. The Vorteri are still out there, and they won't stop until they've erased every trace of us." John finally lowered his weapon, though his grip remained firm. "They are after me too?" Serafina arched an eyebrow. "I find that hard to believe. What could a group of galactic warlords possibly want with a relic like you?" John didn't answer. Instead, he glanced around the wreckage, his mind calculating the best escape route. He had no time for trust, no time for distractions. But something about Serafina's presence unnerved him. She wasn't just some survivor, she was being hunted, just like him. A distant explosion shattered the eerie silence. The station trembled as a new wave of enemy forces descended upon them. The Vorteri had returned, and they had no intention of letting anyone leave alive. John clenched his jaw. He didn't trust Serafina. But right now, survival was the only priority. "We need to move," he said, holstering his weapon. "Now." Serafina hesitated, as if weighing the risks. Then, with a sharp nod, she turned and motioned for NYX to follow. Together, they sprinted through the wreckage, the sound of approaching warships echoing behind them. For the first time in a long time, John Wick wasn't fighting alone. The deafening roar of engines filled the void as John Wick and Serafina weaved through the chaotic expanse of the Thanatos 9 asteroid belt. Jagged, moon-sized rocks tumbled in slow, deadly rotations, their surfaces illuminated by the distant glow of a dying star. Behind them, the relentless Vorteri warships closed in, their sleek, black hulls slicing through space like predatory beasts. John gritted his teeth as he gripped the controls of their stolen starfighter. "I assume you have a plan?" he asked, his voice calm despite the incoming hailstorm of plasma fire. Serafina, seated beside him, furiously tapped at the hollow interface in front of her. "Survive," she muttered. "And maybe not get atomized." NYX, her mechanical canine companion, crouched between them, its eyes flashing rapidly as it processed incoming data. The dog let out a low, synthetic growl before speaking in a crisp, electronic voice. "Hostiles, 12. Estimated survival probability, 17%. Adjusting strategy." John smirked. "Sounds about right." A barrage of laser fire streaked past, illuminating the cockpit with crimson light. One blast grazed their starfighter's hull, sending a violent shudder through the ship. Alarms wailed. "Shields at 40%. Serafina warned. John's reflexes took over. He slammed the throttle, diving the ship into a narrow gap between two asteroids. The Vorteri fighters followed, their pilots skilled but reckless. Using the debris field to his advantage, John twisted the ship at impossible angles, forcing their pursuers to navigate the treacherous labyrinth of spinning rock and destruction. One fighter miscalculated, smashing into an asteroid, its hull crumpling before erupting into flames. The explosion sent shockwaves through the debris field, scattering smaller rocks into the paths of the remaining pursuers. NYX sprang into action, plugging its cybernetic tail into the ship's control panel. Initiating countermeasures, it announced. Suddenly, the ship's external comms came to life, blasting a deafening burst of static that disrupted the Vorteri's targeting systems. Their formation faltered, giving John just enough of an opening. "Hold on," he said, voice steady. He jerked the controls to the side, sending their ship into a sharp spiral. At the same time, he deployed an energy mine, a compact sphere of condensed plasma. As the Vorteri ships closed in, the mine detonated, sending out a gravitational shockwave that crushed one fighter and sent the others spiraling out of control. "Nice move," Serafina admitted, impressed despite herself. But the danger was far from over. The remaining Vorteri ships adjusted, recalibrating their targeting systems. One of them, a heavily armored warbird, locked onto them with a tractor beam. Their ship lurched violently, unable to break free. "We need an exit," John barked. Serafina scanned the readings. "There's a wormhole up ahead. It's unstable, but..." "No choice," John said. He fired up the thrusters, forcing their ship forward as the tractor beam strained against their momentum. NYX hacked into the Warbird's targeting array, sending a burst of false readings to their systems. For a split second, the tractor beam flickered. That was all John needed. He pulled the ship into a hard roll and hit the afterburners. The Starfighter shot forward, narrowly escaping the Warbird's grasp. The Vorteri fighters gave chase, but the swirling maelstrom of the wormhole loomed ahead. "Hold tight!" John shouted. The ship plunged into the vortex of warping light and energy. Reality bent around them. Then, silence. And when they emerged, they were no longer in the Thanatos 9 belt. Seraphina's face turned pale. "Oh no!" John followed her gaze. Before them stretched an expanse of eerie, crimson-hued space. Derelict ships drifted lifelessly. Something was very wrong. NYX's eyes flickered. "Warning, we are not alone." The air on Epsilon Prime was thick with smog and desperation. Towering neon-lit skyscrapers cast long shadows over the narrow, filth-strewn streets, where outcasts, bounty hunters, and assassins prowled like predators. This was the place where the lawless thrived, where honor was a relic of the past. John Wick stepped onto the rain-slit pavement, his eyes scanning the chaos. Beside him, Seraphina pulled the hood of her cloak lower, shielding her face from prying eyes. NYX, her cybernetic canine, padded silently at their heels, sensors on high alert. "I don't like this place," Seraphina muttered. "You don't have to," John replied, moving forward with a purpose. "We're here for Kane Voss." Kane Voss was a legend among mercenaries, a former soldier turned information broker who knew every dark secret of the galaxy. If anyone could help them, it was him. But finding him wouldn't be easy. And getting his help? That would be even harder. They navigated through the maze of backstreets until they reached a dimly lit establishment known as the Crimson Veil, a bar where the most dangerous figures in the galaxy congregated. The moment they stepped inside, conversations faltered. Eyes, both organic and cybernetic, fixed on John and his companions. A massive, four-armed bouncer blocked their path. "State your business." John didn't hesitate. "We're looking for Kane Voss." The bouncer chuckled. "Everyone is. But he doesn't see just anyone. You need an invitation. And the only way to earn one is through the Crimson Arena." John exchanged a glance with Seraphina. "What is it?" "A blood sport," the bouncer sneered. "One rule, only one leaves alive." That night, the Crimson Arena was packed. A dome of reinforced glass encased the battleground, shielding the bloodthirsty spectators from the carnage inside. The fighters, a collection of the most ruthless killers in the galaxy, awaited their turn to step into the pit. John stood in the center, his usual suit replaced with armor-plated tactical gear scavenged from the ruins of Nova 6. Across from him, a brute of a warrior loomed, a Vorteri executioner wielding an energy glaive. The crowd roared, eager for blood. A siren blared. The fight began. The Vorteri lunged first, swinging the glaive in a wide arc. John ducked, rolling to the side. With lightning speed, he drew his plasma pistol and fired. The alien twisted, avoiding a fatal shot, but the blast seared through its shoulder. Enraged, it slammed the glaive into the ground, sending a shockwave that knocked John off balance. John recovered quickly. With surgical precision, he closed the distance, using the butt of his gun to break the Vorteri's knee. As the alien fell, John delivered the final shot, a single bolt through the skull. The executioner slumped, lifeless. The crowd erupted into cheers. John Wick had won. Kane Voss was waiting for them in the VIP lounge above the arena. He was older than John remembered, his face weathered by war and regret. He studied John for a long moment before speaking. "You never change, do you?" John sat down across from him. "I need information." Voss smirked. "Nothing is free, John. You know that." Serafina, standing beside John, watched him carefully. For the first time, she felt something stir, a strange admiration for this human who defied the impossible time and time again. But admiration wasn't enough. "Not yet." Voss leaned forward. "The Vorteri are after something bigger than you think. And if you want to stop them, you'll need more than just a gun." John exhaled slowly. "Then tell me what I need to do." Voss smiled. "Welcome to the war?" And just like that, John Wick was pulled deeper into the galaxy's deadliest conspiracy. The roar of the crowd in the Crimson Arena still echoed in John Wick's ears as he stepped out of the battleground, victorious but not unscathed. His breathing was steady, his posture unwavering, but the battle had taken its toll. Blood, his own and his opponent's, stained his tactical gear. Kane Voss watched from the balcony above, nodding in approval. "Not bad, Wick. Still the best killer in the room." John ignored him, wiping the blood off his hands as he holstered his weapon. Serafina and NYX were waiting for him outside, their faces tense with worry. "You shouldn't have gone in alone," Serafina said, her violet eyes scanning him for injuries. "I wasn't alone," John replied, eyes shifting toward the arena. "I had 1,000 people betting against me." NYX let out a low, mechanical growl, its sensors detecting something approaching. Before John could react, the entire arena trembled. Then, the walls exploded. Berserker X-99 had arrived. Designed as the ultimate killing machine, the Berserker X-99 was a towering mechanical monstrosity, plated with impervious armor and equipped with an arsenal that could level a city. Zar'Vex had sent it for one reason: to eliminate John Wick. As the dust settled, the hulking assassin stepped forward, scanning the wreckage. Its glowing red eyes locked onto John. Target acquired. Without hesitation, the machine raised its arm, a rapid-fire plasma cannon emerging from its wrist. John grabbed Serafina and dove behind a pillar as the street was torn apart in a hail of energy bolts. The heat seared the air, leaving black scorch marks where they had stood just seconds ago. "We need a plan," Serafina shouted over the chaos. John's expression remained calm, but his mind was racing. A frontal assault was suicide. He needed to outthink it, outmaneuver it. Then, NYX lunged. The cybernetic dog dodged between the Berserker's massive legs, releasing an EMP burst that momentarily disrupted its systems. Sparks flew as the machine staggered, its targeting system flickering. John seized the opportunity, sprinting forward and unloading a full clip into the exposed joints of its armor. The bullets barely dented it. "Great," John muttered. "Looks like we do this the hard way." Berserker X-99 recalibrated in seconds, its system overriding NYX's interference. It turned, extending a massive blade from its forearm and slashing toward John. He barely dodged, the blade slicing through the air inches from his face. Rolling to the side, he grabbed a fallen plasma rifle from one of the arena guards and fired at the machine's power core. A direct hit. The Berserker staggered, electricity crackling through its circuits. But it wasn't enough. It lunged again, this time faster, adapting to John's tactics. Then Serafina acted. Raising both hands, she channeled a pulse of pure energy, something John had never seen before. A bright, violet force shot from her palms, striking the Berserker in the chest. The machine stumbled backward, momentarily destabilized. John didn't question it. He grabbed a thermal grenade from his belt, activated it, and hurled it into the berserker's exposed core. Boom! The explosion tore through the mechanical assassin, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. When the smoke cleared, all that remained of Berserker X-99 was a smoldering heap of metal. John exhaled, reloading his gun. That was unexpected. Serafina, breathing hard, looked at her hands. Yeah? Tell me about it. With the immediate threat neutralized, the trio turned to Kane Voss, who had watched the battle unfold from a safe distance. The old mercenary chuckled as he approached. Well, I'd say you earned your reward. John didn't respond, waiting for the real information. Voss's expression grew serious. The Starborn Key isn't just a relic, John. It's a gateway, something ancient, something powerful. Whoever controls it doesn't just hold an artifact. They hold the fate of the entire galaxy. John absorbed the words carefully. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something much bigger. And he had a feeling this war was only just beginning. The journey to Celestial Temple was treacherous. The temple, hidden within the eye of an eternal storm on the planet Zephyria, was said to house the Starborn Key, a relic of unfathomable power. It was a place of legend, whispered about in the darkest corners of the galaxy. But legends rarely spoke of the dangers within. As John, Serafina, and NYX descended through the violent atmosphere, lightning crackled around their ship. The winds howled like spirits warning them to turn back. Serafina, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination, gripped the controls tightly. The Celestial Order won't let us take the key without a fight, she warned. John simply loaded his weapons. They are welcome to try. The temple loomed ahead, a monolithic structure carved from obsidian and pulsating with an eerie glow. As they stepped inside, the air grew thick with energy, charged with a force older than time itself. Golden symbols lined the walls, shifting and rearranging themselves as if alive. Then, they appeared. The Celestial Order hooded figures draped in dark robes, their faces obscured. At their center stood Grandmaster Orin, an entity rumored to be immortal. His piercing silver eyes locked onto John. You do not belong here, assassin, Orin's voice echoed, resonating in their minds rather than through the air. The key is not for hands tainted by blood. John remained unfazed. I'm not here for permission. Orin raised a single hand, and the temple trembled. A ring of energy formed around them, sealing their fate. Then you must prove yourself. John barely had time to react before Orin struck. The Grandmaster moved with supernatural speed, a blur of motion as he wielded a blade of pure energy. John dodged by instinct, the blade slicing through the air where his head had been moments before. He fired twice. The bullets stopped mid-air, disintegrating before they could touch Orin. Cute trick, John muttered. Orin attacked again, forcing John into a brutal hand-to-hand fight unlike anything he had faced before. The Grandmaster was stronger, faster, and had centuries of combat knowledge. Every blow John blocked sent shockwaves through his bones. But John Wick wasn't just a fighter. He was a survivor. Using his surroundings, he rolled beneath a crumbling pillar and fired at the weak points in the temple's structure. The ceiling partially collapsed, forcing Orin to evade, giving John the opening he needed. He lunged, landing a brutal strike to Orin's chest. For the first time, the Grandmaster staggered. Meanwhile, Serafina was drawn toward the inner sanctum, where the Starborn Key rested. The walls pulsed as if responding to her presence. Her heart pounded as memories flooded back, visions of her ancestors, the Starborn, guardians of this power. She had spent her life running, hiding from the truth. But now, it was time to embrace it. Placing her hand on the altar, the key reacted, sending a shockwave of energy throughout the temple. The celestial order froze, turning toward her. Orin's eyes widened. It cannot be, the last of the Starborn. John took advantage of the distraction, delivering a final, devastating blow. Orin collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily. For the first time in centuries, the Grandmaster knew defeat. Serafina held the key in her hands, its glow merging with her own energy. The temple began to shake as the power of the Starborn awakened. John holstered his gun. Guess that proves I belong here? Orin, still on his knees, let out a small chuckle. Perhaps you do, assassin. But before they could celebrate, the storm outside intensified. Something else was coming. And this battle was far from over. The battle erupted the moment John and Serafina laid eyes on the Starborn Key. The artifact hovered in the air, pulsating with energy, but they had no time to marvel at it. A deep, guttural voice echoed through the chamber, sending chills down their spines. Did you truly believe I would let you take it so easily? Zar'Vex's towering figure materialized in the darkness, flanked by an army of cybernetic enforcers. Their red optics glowed like dying stars, their weapons primed and aimed. John's grip on his gun tightened. Of course not. That would have been too easy. Serafina barely had time to react before the first wave of enemy fire lit up the chamber. John moved with inhuman speed, dodging plasma blasts while returning fire with lethal precision. Every shot found its mark, but for every enemy he felled, two more emerged from the shadows. Serafina channeled the power within her bloodline, summoning energy shields to deflect incoming blasts. HYF, her cybernetic canine, weaved through the chaos, tearing into the enforcers with razor-sharp fangs and disrupting their targeting systems with EMP bursts. Despite their efforts, the enemy numbers were overwhelming. John fought relentlessly, his body a blur of movement as he gunned down attackers with deadly efficiency. But even he couldn't be everywhere at once. A sudden explosion sent debris flying, knocking John off balance. Before he could regain his footing, a massive figure loomed over him. The warlord's hand, Zar'Vex's personal executioner, swung a hammer-like weapon down with the force of a meteor. John rolled away just in time, the impact shattering the ground where he had stood. Serafina screamed his name, her voice filled with desperation. She stretched out her hand, sending a surge of energy at the warlord's enforcer, forcing it to stagger back. But the momentary distraction was all Zar'Vex needed. He moved with terrifying speed, his blade slicing through the air. Before John could intervene, Zar'Vex's weapon pressed against Serafina's throat. She gasped, her body immobilized by some unseen force. John froze. His blood ran cold. "Drop your weapon," Zar'Vex commanded, his voice like grinding stone. "Or she dies." John's mind raced. He had fought impossible odds before, survived against enemies who outmatched him in every way. But this was different. This was her. Serafina, the one who had fought beside him, trusted him when no one else did. And now, she was his weakness. His hands trembled as he lowered his gun. The Starborn Key pulsed, sensing the shift in power. Zar'Vex's lips curled into a victorious sneer. "Good. Now, kneel." John Wick never kneeled. But for Serafina, he might have no choice. The cold, sterile halls of Zar'Vex's fortress stretched endlessly before John Wick. The scent of metal and ozone filled the air, the unmistakable sign of high-powered energy weapons. He moved like a shadow, HYF padding silently at his side, the cybernetic dog scanning for threats with its enhanced optics. Zar'Vex had made a mistake. He thought John Wick was a man who negotiated, a man who played by the rules of the galaxy. But John had only ever followed one rule: never let them take what's yours. Seraphina had been taken. The Starborn Key was now a bargaining chip. And John Wick had made his choice. He wouldn't trade. He wouldn't surrender. He would burn them all. The first guards never saw him coming. Two Vorteri enforcers patrolled the upper corridors, their reptilian forms clad in exoskeletal armor, their plasma rifles slung lazily over their shoulders. They were comfortable, convinced that no one would be reckless enough to breach the most secure facility in the quadrant. John proved them wrong. A blade flashed in a dim light, slicing through the throat of the first guard before he could even gurgle out a warning. The second barely had time to register his comrade's fall before John slammed him into the wall, driving his silenced pistol under the alien's chin and pulling the trigger. NYX growled softly, ears twitching as the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. More were coming. John picked up one of the fallen plasma rifles. "Let's move." The security system registered an intruder too late. By the time alarms blared through the fortress, John was already deep inside, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. NYX hacked the door systems, shutting off escape routes and rerouting guards into kill zones. John didn't have time for mercy. Every shot was precise, every movement honed to perfection. He wove through enemy fire like a specter, his bullets finding skulls, joints, and exposed weak points. One Vorteri brute charged him with a shock hammer, roaring in rage. John ducked low, sliding beneath the arc of the weapon, firing 3 shots into the alien's kneecaps before finishing him with a round to the skull. An automated turret whirred to life ahead, targeting him in milliseconds. But NYX was faster. The cyberdog leaped, latching onto the turret's targeting array and tearing it apart with powerful steel jaws. The turret sparked and died. John gave NYX a quick nod before moving forward. The final door slid open with a mechanical hiss, revealing a towering chamber lined with pulsating conduits of raw energy. At its center, encased in a force field, was Seraphina unconscious, her body suspended mid-air by an energy field. And before her stood Zar'Vex. The alien warlord was even more imposing up close, his biomechanical armor shifting like living metal around his form. His crimson eyes gleamed with amusement as he turned to face John. "You really are persistent, human," Zar'Vex rumbled, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "I offered you a choice. You could have walked away." John aimed his rifle. Wrong. Zar'Vex barely moved, yet the force field around Seraphina flickered. "One shot, and she dies," he mused. "The Starborn Key belongs to me, assassin. Hand it over, and I may let her live." John tilted his head slightly. "No." Then he opened fire. The battlefield was chaos. Fire and smoke filled the air as explosions shook the ground beneath John's feet. He had fought impossible battles before, but this was different. The war was ending, but the cost was too high. Seraphina stood at the center of it all, clutching the Starborn Key as it pulsed with radiant energy. Vorteri's soldiers closed in from all sides, their weapons trained on her, but she didn't waver. Her expression was resolute, her violet eyes filled with a quiet sadness. "John," she called out, her voice barely audible over the deafening battle. "There's no other way." John gunned down another approaching soldier before turning to her, his face a mix of anger and desperation. "Don't say that. We get out of this together." She shook her head. "The key isn't just a relic. It's a gateway, a weapon, a force beyond our understanding. If Zar'Vex gets his hands on it, the entire galaxy will fall." John clenched his jaw. He had spent his entire life fighting against impossible odds, surviving when others thought he wouldn't. But this wasn't a fight he could win with bullets and fists. Sarafina turned to face Zar'Vex, who stood atop the ruins, his biomechanical armor glistening in the firelight. The warlord was wounded, his forces decimated, but he still had the upper hand. "You cannot stop me," Zar'Vex growled. "Surrender the key, and I may allow you to live." John stepped in front of Sarafina, his gun raised. "Not happening." Zar'Vex let out a guttural laugh. "Then watch her die." Without hesitation, he lunged, faster than anything should be capable of moving. John fired, but Zar'Vex batted the bullets away with a kinetic shield, closing the distance in an instant. His massive hand reached for Sarafina. And then, the key activated. A surge of golden energy erupted from Sarafina's hands, striking Zar'Vex mid-air and sending him flying backward. The sheer force of it shattered the ground, tearing through the battlefield with the wrath of a dying star. Vorteri's soldiers screamed as they were vaporized in a shockwave. Even John was thrown back, barely managing to hold on to consciousness as the world around him burned. When the light faded, Sarafina stood at the heart of a glowing vortex. Her body was no longer fully solid. Ethereal ribbons of energy flowed through her, merging with the key itself. She turned to John one last time. "Run." "No." He pushed himself up, ignoring the pain, reaching for her. "We fight. We find another way. There is no other way." Her voice was soft, but firm. "The key must be sealed, and I'm the only one who can do it." John shook his head violently. "I won't let you do this." She smiled a sad, knowing smile. "You already have." The energy around her flared, lifting her into the air. The storm intensified, the portal growing brighter. Zar'Vex, battered and broken, let out a final roar of defiance as he was pulled into the vortex. His body disintegrated in an instant, along with the remnants of his army. John fought against the force pulling him back, refusing to let go, but NYX, loyal even in the face of destruction, lunged forward, knocking him away from the collapsing vortex. He landed hard, his vision blurring. The last thing he saw was Sarafina's silhouette dissolving into light. And then, silence. When John awoke, the battlefield was gone. The storm had vanished. The ruins of the fortress were now nothing but quiet debris, scattered beneath an empty sky. NYX lay beside him, its mechanical frame flickering with damage, but still operational. John sat up, his hands gripping the dirt beneath him. He waited for some sign that Sarafina had survived. That she had found a way back. But there was nothing. Only the stars above, cold and indifferent. He had won. And yet, he had lost everything. John closed his eyes, the weight of it all pressing down on him. He had fought for revenge. He had fought for survival. But this was different. This was sacrifice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the only thing he had left of her, a small pendant she had once worn. He held it tightly, feeling the warmth it still carried, as if some part of her remained. Then, without a word, John Wick stood up. The galaxy still had battles to fight. And he would be there to finish them. The battlefield was behind him, but the war inside him raged on. John Wick moved through the ruins of the fallen stronghold, NYX limping beside him. The cybernetic dog had taken severe damage in the fight, yet its red optics still burned with life. They had survived, but survival felt hollow without Sarafina. Grandmaster Orin stood at the edge of the battlefield, waiting. The ancient warrior, clad in ceremonial armor, looked upon John with an expression that was neither sorrow nor relief, only understanding. "You fought well," Orin said. John remained silent, gripping Seraphina's pendant in his hand. He had nothing left to say. Orin took a step closer. "She is not truly gone." John's eyes snapped to him, filled with a sharp intensity. "What?" The Grandmaster gestured toward the sky, where the remnants of the energy vortex still flickered like dying embers. "The Starborn Key does not merely destroy. It opens doors. It bends reality. And sometimes, it chooses a different fate." John's grip on the pendant tightened. "Where is she?" Orin's voice was calm, measured. "I do not know. But I do know this: if the key took her, she can be found." John looked up, his gaze tracing the endless expanse of space. For the first time in years, a new purpose ignited within him. He had spent a lifetime taking revenge, fighting battles that only left him with more scars. But this was something else. This was a quest. NYX let out a low whine, as if sensing the change in his master. John reached down, running a hand over the damaged plating of the cyberdog's head. "We're not done yet." Orin nodded approvingly. "Then you must prepare. The path ahead is not one of vengeance, but of legend." John exhaled, slipping Seraphina's pendant around his neck. "Good. Legends don't die." Without another word, he turned toward the horizon, NYX at his side. The galaxy was vast, and somewhere among the stars, the truth waited for him. John Wick was no longer just an assassin. He was the beginning of a legend.